mom was the stability of the family. And she tried really hard to make things normal for my brother and I, my older brother and I, but things can't be normal in a family ruled by addiction. And eventually, my birth father began molesting me while he was intoxicated. So by age 12, you know, I always say that I think the first bad habit I picked up was lying, because I didn't tell anybody about what was going on. You know, I hid it, and I really, really loved my dad. You know, really loved, always yearned for a relationship with him, and wanted, you know, when he was sober, there was nobody better. You know, he was fun and smart and everything, but he just wasn't sober very often. And so by the time I was a little girl, my mom and dad had divorced, and mom went on and married a really good man who I consider my daddy now. But I'd kept silent about what had gone on and started dabbling with, I was smoking pot by age 12 and started sniffing inhalants. And I had decided by age 16, my birth father had offered me a car and no rules if I'd go live with him. And I remember thinking that he had changed. You know, I thought at the time that he hadn't been drinking. And so I wanted that relationship with him, and I moved to go live with him. Big mistake, big mistake. He was drunk again by the time I got there that day to move in with him, and I was just too proud to go home and tell my mom I was wrong. And by the time I left his house, a couple years later, about a year and a half later, I was a wreck. I would say I was probably an alcoholic by age 16. Dabbling some really serious drugs while I was still in high school. I was already trying cocaine and LSD, and after that, just drug to drug to drug. Eventually, somebody introduced me to meth, and that was the thing that really got me. And I was a meth addict for 11 years of daily usage, and was doing opiates throughout that too. So I was quite a mess. I had money coming in for, you know, I was in school, I was finishing up my bachelor's degree at that point, and I had money coming in for a student loan for my college. And so I had this great idea, you know, I just needed drugs, so I called my dealer and I offered him $2,000 when that came in, if he would go ahead and front me drugs at that moment, you know, and I wasn't thinking of anything like, you know, investing in his drug business or anything like that. I was just desperate at that moment. Because every time I would try to go without using, I would start going through withdrawals. You know, I remember, I describe it as a fingernail that would start digging at the back of my brain, and that would be all I could think about. And it just was relentless. It was awful. Anybody who's ever dealt with addiction knows exactly what I'm talking about with that. So, you know, the fingernail had started, and I was like, okay, I got to do something. So I called him up, and I made him this offer, and he's like, yeah, sure, come on over. So I went over, and I picked up what I needed and never thought anything of it. And I was living in the state of Florida at the time, and my mom and my stepdad were living here in Marion, Illinois. And they got down on their knees. My mom told me later that they had gotten down on their knees right about that time, put their hands together, and gotten a prayer of agreement. And they said, Lord, whatever it takes, save our daughter. And then almost immediately after that, the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, was coming through my door and handcuffing me and arresting me on charges of conspiracy to traffic and distribute over 500 grams of methamphetamine.
Like what you saw? Make sure to comment and like below. Hit that subscribe button for more content uploaded weekly.